My mother's 62nd birthday dinner was supposed to be a celebration. 18 people around a long table at her favorite Italian restaurant. The one with the white tablecloths and the candles she liked. My sister Rachel had picked the place. My brother Kevin had driven Mom there. I had paid for it. All of it. The $340 tab, the $60 cake, the flowers on the table. I'd Venmo'd the restaurant 2 days before and asked them to put it on a single card. My card. But nobody knew that part. And that was exactly the problem. I arrived a little after 6. Mom was already seated at the head of the table, laughing about something Rachel had said. The whole family was there. Aunts, cousins, Mom's 2 closest friends. Everyone was dressed up. Everyone looked happy. I slid into the empty chair near the end of the table next to Kevin and smiled. For about 40 minutes it was fine. Then Mom stood up to say something. She does this, stands up mid-meal, taps a glass, demands everyone's attention. It's her thing. She's been doing it my whole life. I just want to say thank you, she said, holding her wine glass up. To my beautiful children. Rachel is getting married next year. Kevin just got promoted. And... She paused. Looked at me. And then she smiled, the kind of smile that isn't really a smile. Well, and then there's Nadia. Our family ATM. The table erupted. Not polite laughter. Real laughter. The kind that fills a room. Rachel covered her mouth, shoulders shaking. Kevin grinned into his water glass. My Aunt Linda slapped the table. Mom's friend Carol said, "Oh my God, that's so true," and everyone laughed harder. I sat very still. Mom wasn't done. She turned to the table, still holding her glass. Seriously. Whenever anyone needs anything, Nadia pays. Need a new fridge? Call Nadia. Car broke down. Nadia's on it. It's basically her job at this point. More laughter. Mom shrugged like she was being charming. Like it was funny. Like it was a compliment. I smiled. I didn't say anything. I picked up my fork and kept eating. And I made a decision. Not right then. Not in that moment. The decision had been building for months. Maybe longer. But sitting there watching my mother use me as a punchline in front of 18 people, watching no one defend me, watching the woman I'd spent 4 years financially keeping afloat laugh at the fact that she'd been doing it, something inside me went very, very quiet. Not angry. Not loud. Just so. Like a switch flipping off. I finished my dinner. I stayed until dessert. I said happy birthday to my mother, hugged her and left at 8:15. I drove home in silence. And that night at 9:47 p.m. I opened my laptop, logged into every account and began. I need to take you back. Because this didn't happen overnight. This was 4 years in the making. My dad died in February of 2020. Heart attack. He was 63. It was fast. One morning he was fine, that afternoon he was gone. Mom called me from the hospital and I drove there and sat with her in a white plastic chair and neither of us said much. That's how grief works sometimes. You don't have words. You just sit. Dad had been the one managing the finances. Not because Mom couldn't, she's not unintelligent, but because he just always had. He paid the bills. He handled the mortgage. He kept track of everything in a little notebook he stored in the kitchen drawer. When he died, that notebook was the only record anyone had. Within 2 weeks, Mom called me in a panic. Nadia, I don't know what's due when. I don't know what the passwords are. I can't figure any of this out. I was 29. I just finished my master's in finance. I was working as a junior analyst at a firm downtown, making $72,000 a year. It wasn't a lot. But I knew numbers. I knew how to organize things. And she was my mother and she was grieving and I loved her. So I said yes. Just for a few months, I told her. Until you get on your feet. That was 4 years ago. The first few months it made sense. Mom was devastated. She could barely get out of bed some days. Someone needed to make sure the mortgage got paid, the electric bill didn't get shut off, the groceries showed up. I set up autopays. I linked her accounts to mine. I created a spreadsheet because of course I did, and tracked every single dollar going out the door. Here is what that spreadsheet looked like in those early months. Mom's mortgage. $1,450 a month. Utilities, electric, gas, water combined, $520. Groceries and household supplies, $480. Mom's car insurance and payment, $390. Internet and cable, $160. Mom's credit card minimum payments. $750. That's $3,750 a month. Before emergencies. And there were always emergencies. The water heater broke in March. $1,200. The fridge stopped working in May. $900 for a replacement. Kevin's car needed new brakes in June. And somehow that became my problem too because he lived at Mom's house and used her car half the time anyway. $340. By the end of the first year, I'd spent $51,000 on my mother's household. $51,000. In 12 months. On a salary that had just recently been bumped to $78,000. I was living in a studio apartment. I ate ramen 3 nights a week. I didn't go out. I didn't buy new clothes. I didn't have a vacation in over a year. Every paycheck after taxes I looked at the numbers and I did the math and I transferred what needed to be transferred. And I told myself it was temporary. I told myself Mom would figure it out. I told myself this is what family does. But Mom didn't figure it out. Because she didn't need to. I was handling it. By the second year the pattern was set in stone. Mom had stopped asking what things cost. She just spent. Groceries came from the expensive store now. The one with the organic everything and the fancy cheeses. The electric bill crept up because she kept the heat at 74 degrees in winter and the AC blasting in summer. Rachel moved back home for 6 months between apartments, and Mom added her phone bill to the pile without asking me. $85 a month just quietly added. And then there was Rachel's engagement. Rachel got engaged in the spring of my 3rd year paying for Mom's life. Her fiancé Marcus is a good guy. But the engagement party? That was all Mom. And Mom had opinions about what it should look like. We need to rent out the garden at Rosewood, Mom told me over the phone one evening in April. It's only $2,800. Only $2,800. I didn't say anything. I just transferred the money. The dress Mom bought for the party, $640. The flowers, $380. The invitations, actual paper, calligraphed, mailed, $220. All of it came from me. Rachel didn't know. Kevin didn't know. Mom just called, told me the amount and I paid it. Every single time. Kevin wasn't innocent either, but he was a smaller drain. He lived at Mom's, ate Mom's food, used Mom's gas money. He asked for cash sometimes, just to get through the week. And Mom would call me and say, Kevin needs $200, can you wire it? And I would. Because what else was I supposed to do? Say no to my brother while my mother guilt me silently on the other end of the line? I kept the spreadsheet updated. Every month. Every transaction. Every receipt. By the end of year 2 the total was $109,000. By the end of year 3, it was $163,000. And through all of it, no one in my family once asked me how I was doing. Not once did Mom say, Nadia, this is a lot. Are you okay? Not once did Rachel say, hey, Mom says you've been covering things. That's a lot of money. Not once did Kevin look at me and say thank you. The closest I ever came to bringing it up was once about 2 years in. Mom and I were on the phone and I said casually, Mom, have you thought about maybe contributing a little more to the household? Maybe picking up some of the grocery costs. There was a pause. Nadia, she said. I'm a widow. I don't have income. You know that. She did have income. Dad's pension paid her $2,400 a month. She also had $40,000 in savings that she'd had for over a year and never touched. I didn't bring it up again. Here's the part nobody in my family knew. I got promoted. Twice. The first promotion came at the end of year 1. Right when I was deep into paying for everything. Senior analyst. My salary jumped to $108,000. I didn't tell Mom. I didn't tell anyone. Not because I was ashamed. Because I knew exactly what would happen if I did. The requests would get bigger. The emergencies would increase. The expectations would double. I'd watched it happen before. Once early on I casually mentioned I'd gotten a small bonus at work. Within a week Mom called asking if I could help out with a $3,000 repair on the kitchen floor. The bonus was $2,400. She didn't know that. She didn't care. So I kept quiet. When Mom asked what I did for work I said, I work in finance. She'd nod and change the subject. She never asked how much I made. She never asked what my job actually involved. Rachel never asked either. Kevin certainly didn't. At family dinners, conversations about my life lasted about 12 seconds before someone changed the subject to Rachel's latest boyfriend or Kevin's new apartment or something mom needed fixed. I'd learned over time to stop bringing it up. It was easier to disappear into the background than to be ignored in the foreground. The second promotion came 18 months later. Director of Financial Analysis. My salary moved to $145,000. My apartment stayed the same, a small one-bedroom in a quiet part of the city. I drove a 2019 Honda Civic with 67,000 miles on it. I wore the same clothes to work that I'd worn for years. I looked to anyone paying attention like someone who was just getting by. Nobody was paying attention. I had savings too. Not a fortune, not after 4 years of bleeding money into my mother's household, but enough. A retirement account that I'd been quietly building since my mid-20s. A small investment portfolio. Nothing flashy, just steady contributions that I'd managed to keep consistent even through the worst months of paying for Mom's life. An emergency fund that I'd rebuilt 3 times because Mom's emergencies kept draining it. I was not struggling. But I was not living. There is a difference and I felt it every single day. So there I was at Mom's birthday dinner, listening to her call me the family ATM in front of 18 people. And I thought, she's right. I am the family ATM. But ATMs can be closed. I didn't make a scene. I didn't stand up and say, actually Mom, you want to talk about what I've been paying for? I didn't point out that the dinner we were sitting in she hadn't paid for. I didn't say a single word. I'd spent 4 years not saying a single word, and one more evening wasn't going to change that. What changed was something quieter. Something inside. It was the way everyone laughed. Not just Mom but Rachel and Kevin and Aunt Linda and Carol. The way no one looked at me after. The way Mom moved on to the next toast like she hadn't just put a target on my back. Like I was furniture. Like I was a function, not a person. I finished my dinner. I stayed until dessert. I said happy birthday to my mother, hugged her and left at 8:15. I drove home in silence. And that night at 9:47 p.m. I opened my laptop, logged into every account and began. First I logged into Venmo and changed my password. Then Zelle. Then PayPal. I went into my bank's app and removed Mom's account from my linked transfers. I changed the password on the shared grocery delivery account. I went through every autopay I'd set up over the past 4 years. The mortgage, the utilities, the insurance, the credit cards, and I turned them off. One by one. Methodically. Like I was going through a checklist. It took me 43 minutes. When I was done I closed my laptop. I sat on my couch for a while in the dark. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt something closer to exhaustion. Like I'd been holding something heavy for a very long time, and I'd finally quietly set it down. Then I went to bed. I slept better than I had in months. The next morning was a Thursday. I woke up at 6:30, got ready for work and drove to the office like any other day. I didn't check my phone until 9 a.m. There was one text from Mom. Sent at 7:14 a.m. Hey, did you pay the electric bill this month? Got a notification that it's overdue. I read it. I didn't respond. I put my phone face down on my desk and went back to work. By noon there were 4 more messages. Nadia. Hello. The grocery delivery app says the card was declined. What's going on? Can you call me? I read them all during my lunch break. I didn't reply to any of them. Not because I was being cruel. Because I had nothing to say. I'd made my decision. I'd made it quietly and carefully and with full knowledge of what it would mean. Explaining myself wasn't part of it. By 5 p.m. Mom had called me 7 times. I let every call go to voicemail. That evening I ate dinner at my apartment. A simple pasta with vegetables and watched TV. Around 8 I checked my phone again. 12 missed calls now. 3 voicemails. I listened to the first one. Mom's voice, irritated but not yet scared. Nadia, what is going on? The mortgage autopay didn't go through. The bank sent a notification. Can you just call me back? This is getting ridiculous. I deleted it without listening to the others. Friday morning. I was at work by 8. My phone buzzed almost constantly throughout the day. Mom, Rachel, Kevin. All of them calling, all of them texting. I glanced at the screen periodically but didn't open anything. What was happening on the other end I learned later piece by piece. At 8:23 a.m. the mortgage autopay bounced. The bank sent a notification to Mom's email, the one I'd set up for her 2 years ago, and a text to her phone. The mortgage was $1,450. The NSF fee was $35. Total due now, $1,485. At 10:15 a.m., Mom tried to use the debit card linked to the account I'd been funding to buy groceries at the store down the street. Card declined. She stood in the checkout line with a cart full of food and had to put it all back. At 11:40 a.m., Kevin tried to put gas in Mom's car. Card declined at the pump. By 1 p.m. Rachel was texting me in all caps. "What is going on? Mom is freaking out." I didn't respond. By the end of Friday, Mom had called me 31 times. 31 times in one day. I know because I counted later when I went through the call log. The voicemails shifted in tone as the day went on. The first ones were annoyed. "Just fix this, Nadia." The ones in the afternoon were confused. "I don't understand what's happening." The last voicemail, left at 9:58 p.m., was the first one where Mom's voice sounded uncertain. "Nadia, what did you do Saturday?" "I slept in. I made coffee. I sat by the window with a book and enjoyed the quiet of my apartment. The quiet I never got to enjoy because there was always a call, always a request, always something that needed fixing." At 6:47 a.m. the heat in Mom's house shut off. It was February. The outside temperature that morning was 28 degrees. Inside Mom's house, without the furnace running, the temperature started to drop almost immediately. By 10 a.m. it was down to 52. By noon it was 44 degrees in the living room. Mom called me at 7 a.m. Then at 7:15. Then at 7:30. Rachel called at 8. Kevin called at 8:45. The first time he'd called me in weeks. By 10 a.m. the messages were different. "Rachel, Nadia, the heat is off. It's freezing in here. Mom is crying." "Kevin, dude, what is happening? Seriously. Mom, please. The heat is off. So cold. Please just fix this." I read every single message. I sat with my coffee and I read them and I felt not much. A small, sharp ache somewhere behind my ribs. The part of me that still loved my mother, that still remembered who she was before the grief turned her into someone who took and never once looked up to see what it was costing. But underneath that ache was something firmer. Something that said, "This is what you chose. This is what it looks like." I did not respond. By the end of Saturday, by the time I went to bed at 10 p.m., Mom had called me 80 times. 80 times in 3 days. I know the exact number because Rachel texted it to me at 11 p.m., in a message that read, "Mom has called you 80 times. 80. Please, Nadia. Just talk to her." I turned off my phone and went to sleep. Sunday morning. I was making breakfast when I heard a knock at my door. It was Rachel. She was wearing a heavy coat and a scarf, and her nose was red from the cold. She looked like she hadn't slept. When I opened the door, she stood there for a second looking at me, really looking at me, maybe for the first time in a long while. Then she looked past me into my apartment. It's a small place. 1 bedroom, a kitchenette, a living room that doubles as a dining room. The furniture is simple. No artwork on the walls. A single bookshelf half full. The kitchen counter had my coffee mug, a toaster, and a bowl of apples. That was it. Rachel stepped inside slowly. She turned in a small circle, taking it all in. Her engagement ring. The one Mom had made a huge deal about, the one I'd quietly helped Marcus pick out without him knowing, caught the light from the window. "This is where you live," she said. Quietly. Like she was hearing herself say it for the first time. "Yeah," I said. "You want coffee?" She didn't answer. She was still looking around. At the worn couch. The second-hand bookshelf. The small TV. The shoes lined up neatly by the door. 2 pairs. The closet half open, showing a row of simple clothes. "Nadia," Rachel said. She turned to face me. Her eyes were filling up. "How long have you been paying for Mom's house?" I poured her a cup of coffee and handed it to her. "Sit down," I said. She sat. And I told her. Not everything, not every single number, not every single bill. But enough. I told her about the spreadsheet. I told her about the mortgage and the utilities and the groceries and the car payments. I told her about Kevin's breaks and Mom's credit cards and the engagement party flowers and the calligraphed invitations. I told her the total. $187,000, I said. Over 4 years. That's what the bank confirmed. Rachel didn't say anything for a long time. She held her coffee cup in both hands and stared at the table. Her face went through several things: confusion, disbelief, and then something that looked a lot like shame. She didn't. Rachel started. No, I said. She didn't know how much. Or she didn't want to know. Either way. And you never said anything? When would I have said something, Rachel? Every time I tried, she made me feel guilty for asking. I'm a widow. I don't have income. She has Dad's pension. She has savings. He just never had to use them. Because I was covering everything. Rachel set her coffee down. She pressed her hands against her face. Oh my God, she whispered. We sat in silence for a while after that. The morning light moved across the kitchen floor. Outside, a car passed. Somewhere down the hall, a neighbor's dog barked. What do you want me to do? Rachel finally asked. Nothing, I said. I don't want you to do anything. I just want her to understand what's been happening. And I want her to figure it out. Rachel nodded slowly. She looked at me, really looked, and something in her expression shifted. Not pity. Something more complicated than that. I'm sorry, she said. I'm so sorry, Nadia. I had no idea. I know, I said. That's part of the problem. On Monday morning, Mom called the bank. She'd been calling me all weekend, 80 times by Saturday night, and another 40 by Sunday evening. I hadn't answered once. So on Monday, desperate, she called the bank directly. She wanted to know why the payments had stopped. She wanted to know what was wrong with the account. The bank manager, a woman named Sandra, was professional and calm. She pulled up the account history. She looked at the transaction records. And then she told Mom exactly what she saw. Mom called Rachel after that. Rachel called me. The bank manager told Mom everything, Rachel said. Her voice was steady, but I could hear something underneath it. A kind of quiet fury. Not at me, Mom. Every transfer. Every autopay. 5 years of records. Mom's name isn't on any of the funding. It's all been you. Every single month. I know, I said. Mom is. Rachel paused. She's not doing well. I know that too. There was a silence. She wants to talk to you, Rachel said. I'm not ready for that, I said. And I meant it. Not because I was angry, though I was, somewhere deep down, in a place I hadn't let myself look at for a long time. But because I needed Mom to sit with this. To really understand what had happened. Not just the numbers. The years. The silence. The loneliness of being the person everyone relied on and no one ever thanked. Okay, Rachel said. I understand. By the end of the first week, the consequences had compounded into something Mom couldn't ignore or minimize or laugh off. The mortgage payment had bounced twice now. The bank had sent a formal notice. Not yet a foreclosure warning, but close. The language in the letter was careful and specific, and it made clear that continued non-payment would trigger the next stage of the process. The heat had been off for 5 days. Mom had called a repair company on Sunday, but when she gave them her card, it was declined. She didn't have the $847 needed to cover the past due gas bill plus the $200 reconnection fee. She called Rachel, who didn't have it either. She called Kevin, who had $60 in his checking account. The electric bill was $380 overdue. A shut-off notice had arrived in the mail on Tuesday. The car insurance payment had bounced. A letter arrived Wednesday saying the policy would be suspended in 10 business days unless payment was received. Mom's credit cards, 2 of them with minimum payments I'd been making for years, were now past due. Late fees had kicked in. The credit card company had called twice. And the grocery situation was, in Mom's words, a disaster. Without the card working, without cash, without anyone to cover it, the fridge was running low. Mom had $2,400 in her pension, which had deposited on the first of the month. But that money had to cover everything now. And $2,400 doesn't stretch far when you're used to spending $4,000 a month. Kevin, to his credit, had started looking for a part-time job. It was the first time in 2 years he'd done anything like that. Rachel had quietly started paying for some of Mom's groceries out of her own pocket. Not a lot, but enough to keep the fridge from being completely empty. Mom called me every day. Sometimes 10 times a day. Sometimes 20. The voicemails evolved. By Wednesday of the first week they sounded like this. Nadia, please. I know I said something stupid at dinner. I'm sorry. Can we just talk? Please. By Friday. The heat is still off. It's so cold in this house. I don't know what to do. Please, baby. Please just help us. Just this once. I promise we'll figure it out. By the following Monday, day 8. Nadia, I talked to the bank. I know how much you've been paying. I didn't realize. I swear I didn't realize it was that much. Please call me back. I'll do anything. Name your terms. Just please call me. I listened to every voicemail. Every single one. And I did not call back. While my family was falling apart financially, I was doing something I hadn't done in 4 years. I was living. The first week after I cut off the payments, I took the $3,800 I would have transferred to Mom's household and I did something different with it. I paid off a chunk of my student loans, a payment I'd been putting off for months. I set up a new automatic transfer into my investment account. I bought groceries at the store I actually liked, the one with the good bread and the fresh fish. I ordered a meal from a restaurant I'd been wanting to try for over a year. It was a Tuesday night when I sat down at that restaurant, a small Italian place with dim lighting and candles on every table, and ate a meal alone and enjoyed every single bite. The waiter asked if I was waiting for someone. I said no. He smiled and brought me another glass of wine and didn't ask again. I sat there for almost 2 hours. I ate slowly. I tasted everything. And for the first time in a very long time, I didn't feel guilty about spending money on myself. Because here is the truth that no one in my family understood. I had been paying for their life at the expense of my own. Not just financially. The constant calls. The constant requests. The constant low-level anxiety of knowing that if I didn't pay attention something would break, something would shut off, someone would be in trouble. It lived in my chest like a weight I carried everywhere. To work. To bed. To the grocery store. And now it was gone. The silence in my apartment in those first few days wasn't lonely. It was peaceful. It was the first real peace I'd felt in 4 years. Rachel came back on the following Sunday. And the Sunday after that. She didn't come asking me to fix things. She came to sit with me. To talk. To understand. I think in her own way she was trying to make up for 4 years of not noticing. Not all at once. But slowly. One visit at a time. The second time she visited, she brought a bottle of wine and we sat on my couch and she asked me questions. Real questions, the kind no one in my family had asked me in years. What did I actually do at work? What did I enjoy? Was I happy? Did I have friends outside of the office? When was the last time I did something just for myself? I couldn't answer that last one right away. I had to think about it. I told her the truth. About the promotions. About my salary. About the fact that I'd been living in this small apartment not because I couldn't afford anything better, but because every dollar I spent on myself felt like a dollar taken from the family. I'd internalized it so deeply that I didn't even realize for a long time how wrong it was. I thought this was just what you do, Rachel said, holding her wine glass. For family. It is, I said. But not like this. Not one person carrying everything while everyone else benefits and no one says thank you. That's not family. That's just free labor with a guilt trip attached. Rachel was quiet for a long time after that. Mom doesn't understand, she said finally. I know. She thinks money just appears. Like it always has. Dad handled it before and then you handled it and she never had to think about where it came from. Yeah, I said. That's exactly it. So what happens now? I took a sip of my wine. Now she learns. By the end of the second week, the situation at Mom's house had forced some hard decisions. Mom had used Dad's pension money, the $2,400 she'd been saving untouched for years, to cover the most urgent bills. The heat came back on. The mortgage made a partial payment, enough to delay the formal warning. But it was a band-aid. The $40,000 in savings she'd been sitting on, the money she'd never touched because she never needed to, was now being opened reluctantly for the first time. Kevin got a part-time job at a warehouse. He started paying for his own gas. Mom sat down with Rachel and for the first time in years actually looked at a budget. A real one. Not the fantasy version she'd been living on, where money materialized whenever she needed it. The real numbers. What came in. What went out. What was left. It wasn't pretty, but it was honest. Mom called me again on a Thursday night. I let it ring. But this time the voicemail was different. Nadia, she said. Her voice was smaller than I'd ever heard it. Quieter. I talked to Rachel. And I talked to the bank. And I sat down and I looked at everything. Everything you've been paying. For 4 years. Pause. A long one. I didn't know. I swear to you I didn't know how much. I thought. I don't know what I thought. I think I just didn't think about it at all. And that's worse, isn't it? Another pause. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, baby. Not just for the money. For the joke. For all of it. For never asking how you were doing. For never saying thank you. You deserved so much better than what we gave you. Her voice cracked just slightly on the last sentence. I know you're not ready to talk. But when you are, I'll be here. On your terms. Whatever you need. I listened to that voicemail 3 times. And then I sat with it. I didn't call her back that night. Or the next morning. But I didn't delete it either. I'm not going to tell you that Mom and I fixed everything overnight. We didn't. That's not how this works. What I will tell you is this. 3 weeks after Mom's birthday dinner, I agreed to meet her for coffee. Not at her house. At a neutral place. A small cafe near my office that she'd never been to. We sat across from each other and Mom looked tired and smaller somehow, like the weight of the past few weeks had physically shrunk her. She didn't make excuses. She didn't try to guilt me. She just sat there and listened while I told her, calmly, quietly, what the past 4 years had actually been like for me. The loneliness. The stress. The feeling of being invisible while being essential. The way she'd made me feel at that dinner like I was a joke. Mom cried. I didn't cry. I'd already done my crying months ago alone in my apartment in the dark, on nights when the weight of it all became too much. When I was done, Mom nodded. What do you need from me? She asked. I need you to handle your own finances, I said. I need you to use Dad's pension. I need you to sit down with Rachel and make a real budget. I need Kevin to contribute. And I need you to stop treating money like it grows on trees. Or like it grows on me. Mom nodded again. And one more thing, I said. Anything. I need you to never call me the family ATM again. Not as a joke. Not as anything. Because I'm not. I'm your daughter. And I deserve to be treated like one. Mom reached across the table and took my hand. Her eyes were red. Her grip was tight. I know, she said. I know that now. It's been 2 months since that dinner. Mom's household runs differently now. She pays her own mortgage, on time from her pension and savings. Rachel contributes to groceries and utilities. Kevin pays his own expenses. The budget is tight and it's a real adjustment, but it's honest. No one is drowning. No one is pretending. Mom calls me on Sundays now. Not 80 times. Once. We talk for about 20 minutes. She asks how I'm doing, actually asks and actually listens to the answer. Phew. It's a start. I moved to a new apartment last month. A 1-bedroom in a better building with bigger windows and a kitchen I actually like cooking in. I bought new furniture. I bought a painting for the wall. Something bright and warm that I picked out myself just because I liked it. I still drive the Honda Civic. Some habits take a while to change. But here is what I want you